Let's get started. Continuous delivery. Making a case is what we're here to talk about. I did this as a talk at a meetup that we had about a year ago or something like that. And then I tested it out at DevOpsicon as well. So some of you have already seen it, but the idea is some of you haven't, and we want the whole organization to be able to see it, so we're recording and whatnot. So, making the case for continuous delivery. I think that this is a really important topic. Very often in organizations, we get into this mode where we believe that people should do things just because we say that they should do things. And we're traditionally pretty bad at convincing people to see our standpoint or selling them on the things that we're trying to get them to do. And also, I think it's really important to understand that making the case is about building a dialogue and creating a discussion with people. People who may not agree with you, it doesn't mean that they're stupid or they don't know what's going on. They have different concerns than what you have. And their concerns are legitimate as well. It's very important to accept that part of it, to say, okay, you are looking at this from a different angle and you have some concerns. I need to understand those concerns and I need to help you understand why I think that this is a good idea. So this is a little bit about both those things, but primarily it's about you making your side. But I want to make the point that you need to listen to what other people have to say as well. So, the big problem that I see and why we even need to make a case around this, I personally like if people just do what I tell them, but I'm finding more and more as life goes on that that doesn't always happen, oddly enough. That me saying something doesn't always get people to do exactly what I want them to do, which is obviously their failing, but I was going for humor there. Nobody laughs. No? Come on, guys. Loosen up a little bit. But what I'm often finding is exactly the point I just made, that we are talking about different things. When we disagree on a specific point, what I often find is that we are having an apples and oranges discussion. I'm concerned about this thing, and I'm talking about that, and you're concerned about that thing, and you're talking about that, and we're not finding a common ground. We're both just thinking about our side of the equation and what we see. And our arguments make perfect sense to us because we exist in our context and we're concerned about the things that we are concerned about. I put up just business and development teams here, but that's just really an example. I don't even like this terminology of separating these two things from each other so starkly. This could be people in your own team and yourself. It could be various teams discussing with each other. I just wanted to put an example that one side is talking about one thing and one side is talking about another, and each has their own concerns and stuff that they're concerned about. We understand why infrastructure is important because we sit there every day and we work with this stuff and we see the hassles of it and we see the problems that it causes us and we see the costs associated with it. Other people you're dealing with understand why new features are important because their job is to go out and speak to customers and gather information, and they hear feedback from customers. They don't sit with the infrastructure every day. They don't understand why it's important. They understand why a new feature is important because they can see the benefit of that. So what I want to talk about is making this into an apples and apples discussion so that we're all talking about the same thing, basically. So first of all, when having this discussion, the first thing we need to do is clarify what we're even talking about, because there's a lot of fears around what people mean when they say continuous delivery or continuous deployment. So first of all, let's talk about what that actually means. Here's a nice little picture that draws a distinction between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. I'm going to focus primarily on delivery today. And the main point I'm going to do that is because that's the first step. This manual intervention part is really important to talk about. It's very important to help people understand that we are not just going to operate in the Wild West here. This is not about just throwing every single thing that tickles our fancy into production. It is about, well, actually, I have some points about that. So this is a little definition of continuous delivery. A series of practices designed to ensure that code can be rapidly and safely deployed to production by deploying to a production-like environment. These are the words you want to focus on. Rapidly and safely have the possibility to deploy every change, put everything in a production-like environment. You need to make it clear that we're not talking about every single code change we make immediately going into production without any testing or anything like that. Ensuring business applications and services run as expected through rigorous automated testing. You notice how I emphasize the word rigorous there? Rigorous automated testing. Again, trying to make the point here that this is not the Wild West. We don't just throw everything out there and hope that it's going to be okay, because people are concerned about that, and they're rightfully concerned about that. How many people in this room or on the stream have never put a bug into production? Please raise your hands. All right, okay, the people who have never actually deployed anything to production have never put a bug into production. Okay, how many people have been deployed stuff to production and never put a bug into production? Exactly. This is an important point to remember. People are naturally scared because we have had issues in the past. And in a lot of cases, we've probably even been reckless in the past. And so they're frightened of this recklessness. As well, they should be. It's perfectly appropriate and valid to be frightened of that recklessness. So we want to emphasize things like safely, rigorous automated testing, these types of things. And then the last one, since every change is delivered to a staging environment using complete automation, you can have confidence the application can be deployed to production with a push of a button when the business value is ready. Yes?
Do you make any distinction between staging and like red, blue, whatever colors they use? Like staging versus having a subset of the system in production where you deploy stuff?
I'm not sure I follow your question.
Why do we need staging?
Okay, well that's not the question. I'm going to stand here to answer today. Now, like how we set this up and how we actually deploy.
No, what I mean is you test somewhere.
Yes.
That is production like. Could even be production. And then you deploy it.
Yes. Yeah.
That is as valid as staging, correct?
Sure, yeah.
Good.
Okay, does that mean your question was answered? Yeah, okay, I didn't really follow that. But,
he just wanted to say something.
Okay, all right. Another important point to make around this is the point here that we want the ability to quickly and confidently deliver business value. We want to do things like this to allow our business to have flexibility, to be able to say from day to day or sprint to sprint or however it is we're working, to give them the ability to say, now I want to put this thing into production. Today I want to put this thing into production. That's the flexibility we're trying to give to the business with this approach. This picture unfortunately does not show the idea that you can be deploying things into production without actually exposing them to users. This is an important discussion to be having as well. Just having put something out there isn't the same thing as showing it to your users. We're not necessarily talking about taking every single change we make and immediately exposing it to all of our customers. Sometimes we might just want to be putting stuff out there just to see if it works, or even just to deploy, just to test our deployment procedures, or anything along those lines. Putting something in production doesn't necessarily mean that we need to do a marketing push for it every single time, or even show it to people every single time. These are not necessarily the same thing. So I just want to clarify a little bit what we were talking about. And the very important point to make here and continue to drive home when having this discussion is, this is not about us doing whatever we want, whenever we want. This is very far from the Wild West and just throwing stuff out there. The idea is to be rigorous in the approach. So what are the benefits that we get? Because that's what we really want to talk about, right? What do we get from this? Why are we trying to do this? What comes back from it? So increased speed of feedback is a big one. Immediate feedback on code changes. We actually, as soon as we check things in, we have a lot of rigorous automated testing that immediately tells us if we've done something wrong, catching mistakes early and quickly so that they never get to production in the first place. But even more importantly than that, from a making the money argument standpoint, is the ability to gather user feedback quickly and easily. Have people heard this 40 Shades of Blue story? It's not at all related to 50 Shades of Grey. They're two very different things. The 40 Shades of Blue is a story from Google about when they were having a debate over what color, exact shade to have their links be on their Google ads. And there was a lot of debate over, I like this blue, I like that blue. And then somebody finally said, well, why don't we just test them and find out? Which when you're Google, you can do, right? Because you have, what does Google have, 1 billion users? somewhere like something like that. We'll say 1 billion users. You can release it to what? 0.5% and gain massive amounts of feedback really quickly. So Google, by being able to deploy stuff really, really rapidly, they were able to test like 40 shades of blue over the course of a week, and then figure out mathematically that one of them resulted in a slightly higher click-through rate, which I don't remember the exact number, but it added up to about $200 million a year. Which is a pretty significant, okay, maybe for Google, $200 million a year isn't that significant, but the principle remains the same. And if it took you 6 months to put something into production, that is something you could never test. Or if you did test it, how many years would go by before you started earning that 200 million a year, which is obviously nice to have in the pocket. So one of the big benefits here with the ability to get stuff out quickly and securely is the increased rate of feedback and the fact that we can stop debating things and start finding things out through systems like A/B testing, or through doing a dark release where we put stuff out and we don't actually expose it to test that the code is actually working as intended in these types of things. And then that's the point I just made. Allows for a lot more experimentation when we have this rapidity. Improve productivity and efficiency. This is an area that we need to start changing our language in, as far as I'm concerned. One of the things I encounter all the time is people saying, yeah, that's going to be really hard to do. That's going to be really difficult to do. That's going to be complicated to do. All of those things that you are saying, what you're really trying to say is that thing is going to be expensive. It is going to cost money. It is going to cost time. It is going to cost person hours. It's going to cost effort. It's going to cost maintenance fees going forward. All of these things are money. They're not hard. We pay you guys to do hard stuff. You're smart people, right? You're good at doing hard stuff. Hard isn't an argument. Expensive is the argument we want to be making around this type of thing. So basically, stop saying that things are hard or difficult and start saying that's going to cost a lot. Is it worth the investment? Change the tone of the conversation. And then we can save a lot of money with this. This is the point to be made here, right? Like less time setting up environments. How many hours a day you guys spend setting up environments per week? This is the audience and participation part where I ask a question and then you guys say some stuff.
Yeah. That's infrastructure as code, so it's just fork.
All right, so we're past the point where this takes any time then. Anybody else?
Any year now.
Any year now. All right, the point is that time spent setting up environments, for instance, costs money. It's not a hassle, it's not a pain, it's expensive. It's not annoying, it's expensive. Minutes on deploying rather than days. That's always a fun one, right? Like we have an ops team that we sequester in a bunker for like a week and nobody's allowed to speak to them because they're trying to deploy the stuff into production. When we start automating this stuff, all of a sudden that ops team is doing more important things. We're saving money on that team. We're not making their lives easier. We're saving money for the company. We're making money off this type of stuff. Time saved on bugs created by the release process. I thought I had a story about that, but it must be coming later. There's tons of bugs that are created simply by not having an automated release process. That's where a ton of our work comes from. We then have to take those bugs, we have to put them into issue trackers, we have to have triage meetings about them, we have to debate whether they're important or not, we have to go on to fix those things. All of those things cost money. Monotonous tasks, automated increases engagement. That was a little bit harder to motivate in a money standpoint. There's a lot of research around this. I'm not going to quote any of it because there's too many data scientists in the room who will call me on my bad statistics. But there is a lot of research showing that people who do less monotonous work are more engaged and therefore produce more, which in my opinion is also money. So, and this is an easy one because it's really easy to do the math on this kind of stuff. Keep a notepad beside your desk and keep a rough idea of how much time you spend setting up environments in a week, and how much time you spend on deployments, and how much time you spend on bugs created by the release process. And then you just turn that into money. You know how much you make. You know how much it costs. Real easy argument to make here. This is money that we can save for making this kind of investment. Improve quality and reliability. This is a really important one. And this is a lot about sort of assuaging those fears, about talking about how this will actually make things better, doing more frequent releases. There is less stress means less mistakes. I'm thinking a lot of people have already heard this story, but it's a really good one, so I'm going to tell it again. There's a blog post called Nightmare, the Case for DevOps, which is about a company in the UK who had a manual release process. They were a high-frequency trading company, like a financial institution. And they had a manual deployment process, as so many companies do. And now let me be clear, this is not a software bug. Somebody was trying to deploy something, and they didn't copy something properly to one machine. So the thing was tested properly. We knew what it was supposed to do. This was a deployment error that took place. And I'm not going to go into the details of how it went wrong, but let's just say it went horribly, horribly, horribly wrong, to the tune of 460 million pounds in 45 minutes is how much it cost this company when this error occurred, which was an error due to a manual deployment, due to a human being simply making a mistake. Because it's not a question if human beings are going to make mistakes. It's an absolute certainty that at some point in time, you're going to make a mistake. Anybody here who's never made a mistake? Magnus has never made a mistake. I'm betting he's going to at some point in time. We have to stop trying to believe that we can get rid of mistakes and accept that they're going to happen and take caution to prevent those. Interesting side note to that company actually, which was quite an old financial institution, they've been around for, I think, 100 years or more, went out of business as a result of this. As a result of 45 minutes of a problem in production cost them so much money that they went out of business, a 100-year-old institution. How long can we afford to have things going horribly, horribly, horribly wrong? We can probably go longer than 45 minutes. But how long can we go? How long do we want to go? I wasn't actually expecting anyone to answer that question. Important point here is the encouragement of DevOps to create safety nets, to build automated test systems, to build stuff that catches errors before it happens, putting smoke tests in place, getting feedback rapidly so that we are not accidentally deploying bad stuff. We are encouraged by doing this to create safety nets. Smaller changes are lower risk. This is the part that we all have trouble getting over. People have been conditioned to believe that releases to production are risky. And they have been conditioned to believe that through experience. So we can't just act like that's not true, because everything in their experience tells them that that's the case. The point we need to work on making more clearly is it's not the actual act of deployment that has been causing the extreme amount of risk. It's the act of deploying thousands of things at one time that has been causing the extreme amount of risk. Deploying small things incrementally is considerably less dangerous. It's not perfectly secure. Nothing we ever do is going to be perfectly secure. Stuff is always going to get through. But this being scared of deploying things is what causes us to build up a whole lot of stuff and then try to deploy it all at once. And that's where the risk comes in, not through the act of deploying itself. Complex systems behave in unpredictable ways is basically what it is. And when you have thousands of people, I can keep track of what I'm doing, and I can maybe keep track of what Simone is doing, and I can maybe keep track of what 2 or 3 other people are doing. I cannot keep track of what an entire organization is doing. My stuff might be perfectly innocuous in isolation, but if it's combined together with a whole bunch of other stuff, I can't possibly know what's going to happen. Fixes are fast and secure. So this is a fun one. Let's say we had a 6-month release process, which I don't think used to be that unreasonable to get stuff out. How many times do we have critical bugs that take 6 months to get us into production, We're generally able to speed stuff up when everything's going horribly wrong. The issue is the trade-off we're doing for doing that as it is now is we're making that change also risky. We're doing it quickly, we're doing it without good processes, we're doing it without any you know, repeatable steps, right? We're just like, okay, please work, please work. Nope, didn't work. Okay, please work, please work. Oh, nope, didn't work. Please work, please. Okay, it worked. Whew. By setting up these types of things, we can do those types of critical changes both quickly, which we can already do today, but securely as well. Same thing tested as deployed. Has anybody ever heard somebody say that, well, you know, it worked in the staging environment? We ever encountered that? It's weird, right? That stuff doesn't always work exactly as it did in the other environment. This is a fear of people, and it's an important point. And this is why building these types of pipelines and putting continuous delivery in place is really valuable, because we are deploying the exact same stuff that we tested. Because we are using similar configurations, we are using similar environments, because they're being built in the same ways, repeatedly in the same ways. And then, you know, worst case scenario, we're trying to build automated rollbacks, so that if it does go horribly wrong, we can get back quickly. And the only way forward is not forward. We can go back and say, okay, something didn't work there. Let's figure out what didn't work. Happier customers and stakeholders. It's a big claim. I think it's an important one, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is satisfy our customers so that we make more money. Very important point here from the technical side. The customer does not care how much code is checked in. It's completely worthless to them how much code sits in the version control repository. It delivers no value to a customer until it's actually in production. So getting to production with things should always be a high priority, because otherwise we invest effort and we invest work for something that we don't get out. Ability to deliver working software on demand. I touched on this earlier, but this is a lot of what we're trying to go for here. We want our business to be able to say, I want to wait a week and see where we're at then, or I want to go into production today. There's now enough value here that I consider this valuable to make a customer release. Let's set the wheels in motion and do that. And we want them to be able to do that without us saying, okay, so we're going to need 2 months to take all this stuff that you want and get it out there. And this is a quote from Martin Fowler that I think puts it really well. The key test is that a business sponsor could request the current deployment version of the software can be deployed into production at a moment's notice, and nobody would bat an eyelid, let alone panic. Nobody would bat an eyelid. How many people are completely stress-free in their production deployments today? Are some of us getting there? Excellent. Excellent. How's that feel?
Awesome. Thanks. Do it a few times per day.
The audience engagement is great. Sorry, Tobias?
You do it a few times per day, you get used to it, and eventually the stress goes away when you've done hundreds of them and no problem.
Exactly. We want our business to feel that way as well, right? We want our stakeholders and our product owners to be able to say, I want this today, and not be panicked about what that will mean. To just simply have it when they want it. And one of the most important points, because some of you have probably noticed that you can do this type of talk and you don't actually have to be right about any of this. I can just make this up and say it in a convincing fashion. This also happens to be true, which is pretty awesome. Well, you never seen somebody go on and on about something that wasn't actually true and make a convincing case? There's a ton of stuff available on continuousdelivery.com around this that shows it's not just making the argument and talking about it in a theoretical sense, but that site is really, really good for actually having gathered data about how these things improve as a result of taking these actions, and showing actual statistical studies that say less bugs get into production, less time is wasted, and all these types of things. And there's a lot of case studies on there that show that this information is actually true, and you should be using this stuff when you're having these discussions to say, look, it's safer. I know that we're scared about it, but it's actually safer to do it more often, for example, and then have data on that. That's pretty much all I had. Questions?
One just I was kidding when I said I had made a mistake. Just so that everyone knows.
Yeah, I think we got
What?
that.
The ones watching can post questions on the.
Oh.
the electrons tonight.
Can you read them? If they do?
No,
Oh,
but they could,
you can post questions. Where can they post them?
next to the window on the YouTube.
Next to the window on the YouTube channel if you guys have questions remotely. Simone.
Just the point that when you say that it was like a deployment mistake,
Mm.
it's a human error. The fact that you don't have that safety net of the tests after production, that's also the other thing that you're enforced to do if you do continuous delivery. So you're enforced to have not only like the pipeline to deployment, the after deployment to test the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Having smoke tests in place
So
to
you
verify
have
that
one
things.
extra layer of safety there.
An amendment to what I said before about not being stressed when we put things out to production is that one key part in that is knowing how things can fail. We have enough metrics and we have enough experience and control of production environment that if something goes wrong, we know what can go wrong and how to handle it quickly. So we have rollback strategies.
How many teams have automated smoke tests automatically running in production after each deployment? Does any team have that yet?
I'm not aware of any, but it's something we have been discussing.
So I don't know how well they can hear, but the question was how many teams have automated smoke tests in production. I think an important point here is it's not just about the automation around the thing as well. I mean, as we're doing it now, we're manually getting in the habit of checking this stuff, right? Not just throwing it out there and waiting to see if something's broken. I think in the short term, that can be enough of a step, right? Developing the good procedures and then automating.
Given, or am I allowed?
You got any questions there, Rona?
Yeah.
Yeah, Magnus, go first and then I'll take that.
Given the distance from the teams here in Gothenburg to the end user application, is it common that we don't get to hear about long-term bugs, slow emerging bugs until it's a little bit too late? That we have caused?
So the question was, I don't know how well the mic's working. The question was, given the distance to the customer, do we have long-term slow building bugs, or however you phrase it, that we don't find out about right away? The answer is yes, unless somebody disagrees with me on that. I think that's pretty common at this point.
Is it common enough to be considered a problem?
I'm not the one to answer that question, but there's a room full of people who might be.
Yeah.
I would say it might be common, but I don't think it has much to do with continuous delivery. You would have that with or without.
Yeah.
Okay, Samantha's asking, how can we fail gracefully if things go wrong? Roll forward or roll backwards?
I mean, I think that depends a lot on the situation. I think it's good to have the option of doing both, right? I mean, having continuous delivery so we can put stuff out within minutes allows us to try to go forward if we believe that that's something that can be done quickly and well. And then having rollback procedures allows us to go backward if we don't know that that's the case. So I think it's more about, it enables us to have the choice of doing whatever we think is the best course of action at that time.
Mike mentioned that there's techniques for gradually rolling out.
Right.
So using red-black deployments, canaries, in order to limit the impact of bad releases, so that to a fraction of your users.
Yes, putting stuff out to a small portion of the users for a period of time and seeing what happens.
Ula's asking, any input if and how you change the creation of user stories in the continuous delivery world?
Wow. Nope. Not off the top of my head. I think it's a great question. I'd like to think more about it. I'm not just going to make something up on the spot.
I think one observation is that its creation is not that they're more different, but closing them is way easier.
Or harder.
Or harder. All right.
Well, I mean, one thing that I kind of run into is, I think product owners might need to be a little bit more explicit about the type of validation. Like if they want to see it, there's a difference. Like if they want to A/B test it, right? They have to think about the rollout plan in this type of model. Whereas I think previously it was always just assumed everything was going to go through a test and I was going to be able to see it on a system or whatever else. So you need to explicitly say, I want this to be hidden behind a toggle, or this one can just go all the way through and it can just be live when it's live.
Excellent point. Did you guys actually hear that? Somebody in the chat? We'll just assume that's a yes.
Then there's another question from Sam, which is what teams of Meltwater are currently doing continuous delivery?
It's not like there's a yes, check, we are now continuous delivery, fully enabled test in that sense, but I don't know. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel about it at this point? You feel like your teams are doing continuous delivery? Keeping in mind from the earlier slide, that means it can be manual steps that interrupt at some point.
We are.
Yeah.
We have one manual step to deploy the latest. No, we don't have to do something manually to deploy the latest version of our components to saving.
But I think the point here is it's okay if you have a manual step. What's not okay is now it's all ready and it's a 3-month wait time to put it out.
We do have closing weeks and code freezes and stuff. So I would say not completely there yet. But when we don't have those, it's working fine.
Is there still a prepare a release step? And is that okay? Would that, like, there's still a prepare a release for production step, right? Or maybe you've gone past that. Does every commit to the master branch generate a release that can be easily put into production?
Not automatically, but we do it most usually after every commit by now. So it's not completely automatic.
Okay, so you're actually building a release after each commit.
Yeah.
Cool. Didn't know.
Does anybody have an idea of how many teams? Because the original question was how many teams in Meltwater. I don't think we have that answer.
Teams.
Anything else there?
No, Ola answered yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. We already did that. Oh, is there? Well, it's too late now.